Welcome to the Marketing Stack podcast. And in today's episode, I have with me a very good friend. He's somebody who we did an episode with as well. I'm on his podcast called The Naked Sunday. We had our clothes on. Unfortunately, I did pose Caleb the question as to why we didn't have this set up before. But yeah, Caleb's goal, it says on his podcast, is he's dedicated his life to inspiring others to live to their fullest potential, which is very cliche, and I want to ask him about that in a couple of minutes. Naked Sunday is the pursuit of all aspects of personal growth, exploring all topics ranging from health, love, spirituality, wealth, and discovering your true purpose and beyond. So that's about Caleb. Caleb Sunday? Why am I saying Caleb Sunday? It's Caleb Nelson.
It could be Caleb Sunday too.
Sure. So I'm talking to Caleb today because Caleb actually reached out to me in a Facebook group after I needed some help on some research that I was doing, and I'm still kind of doing. I think we're all in research mode all the time anyway, on sort of my direction on my business. And we got to chatting, and Caleb's a cool dude. As you can see, he's quite handsome. If you're on the podcast, go to the YouTube channel, go check this dude out. He's a good looking guy, blue eyes and all the rest. Caleb, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and you're making me blush right off the rip, man. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. White people ain't white, they pink.
That's just my fake and bake, man. A little bit of fake summer glow going on. You know, I have to work very hard to try to get a semblance of a tan, and my wife and my friends always make fun of me for it. And I'm like, whatever. I'm like, I got vitamin D. It's better than the alternative, my hyper pale self. So.
Well, I'm sure the lockdowns weren't any good for you and your skin color.
I didn't stop. I just kept going. So a couple places were still open. I mean, for a very short bit, some of the spots were closed. But like that past summer, I'm one of those strange people. I think I'm one of like the very few people on this planet who actually kind of enjoy chaos because I thrive in it. And from the perspective of like, I feel a lot of joy when I help people. And in chaos, everybody needs help. So it's very obvious. You don't have to look very far to be like, oh, you need some help? Cool, like let's talk, you know, that kind of thing. But from another perspective, I kind of put a lot of pressure on myself to always like be busy, and it forced me to also, I almost had like this built-in excuse to have like time to myself, and pivoting towards like more this online thing. I was like, oh, well, I got a lot of time back, and I was outside every day. And I like during that time, I like reclaimed my health. I guess I was one of those people. I'd started it right beforehand, because I'd kind of I had almost like this weird animosity towards health from owning a gym as long as I did. And I didn't have the joy anymore. And during that whole summer, for whatever reason here in New York, we had like this beautiful warm summer, and there's a park right behind where I live, and I was there every single day. So
nice.
It didn't stop.
Well, I'm glad you didn't, because I think a lot of people did, including myself. Saying that, it's like, I sit in the same position every day, speak to people all over the world, interview people for my podcast and meetings and all the rest. And at the end of the day, I have sometimes lots of imposter syndrome, because I'm like, you didn't do anything. You didn't go anywhere. You didn't move your body. Like, you just woke up, got your machine, ate your food, and went back to bed. And it sometimes feels very strange. And I think that's what happened to a lot of people on, you know, during lockdowns, and in some parts of the world is still happening. But yeah, like that's been sort of my world for the last 5 years anyway. How did you find that transition? I mean, like you said, you know, everyone needs help. So what did you see change in the world in that time?
Ooh, in the world, how did I see change? I saw a lot of people. What really became very apparent is a lot of people do not plan for the obvious, that there will be catastrophe in one way, shape, or form at some point. I think anybody who's been an entrepreneur for a long enough time understands that, and like, well, the bottom could fall out at any point. So looking forward and anticipating downfalls, you know, it happened to be a pandemic. It could have been anything else.
Yeah.
And for me, I'd gone through I changed the culture of my gym when I had it probably 4 or 5 times. We always joke, and it wasn't really a joke. The only thing that didn't move in the 6, 7, 8, 9 years, however long it was, well, at least the one spot we were in, the only thing that didn't move was the rig that was bolted into the ground, and the flooring as well, because it was heavy. I like changing because to me, that there always has to be constant tweaking. There's something that's, when I get that itch, like there's something coming up. I was actually talking to a couple of friends of mine yesterday about, as you get exposed to like the time and you realize like different lengths of time where a certain strategy works, you realize eventually it will lead to a new problem later on.
Yep.
So as you run up into those problems, which does take longer periods of time, each subsequent time, like in the beginning, it's like, how do I make $1 today? Because I need to pay my bills for tomorrow. Then it becomes, how do I do this for the next month? And then how do I plan for 3 months, and then a year, and then 3 years, and then 5 years, and then all of a sudden it goes 10, 20, 30 years. Like, how do I keep doing this, or how do I live my life? But until you've bumped up into enough things, you think like just the thing in front of you is always going to work, and you have to run into that enough. So for me, it became apparently obvious, especially from something like a health field. Like everybody knows you got to like drink more water, you do more exercise, all those things. We're like, and we never think we're going to run into the problem until there's usually some screeching halt moment that like says, hey, I should probably get my act together. That was my exposure in the health field. But that, when you see it across the board on so many levels, from like a mental health to physical health, I think the most obvious was people have taken relationships for granted so much. The convenience of this person is next to me, and I was like, I haven't even talked to them ever. They haven't even had a meaningful conversation. That one really stuck out to me, because I was talking to, before we kind of like completely closed the gym and moved to like kind of made the final decisions, like we're not going back. Like the things I told the clients were like, you all have each other's numbers, you have your friends. Like I can't just be the only, like, what if I died tomorrow? You're going to just not have friends. You're going to not have these relationships. And I think so many people are afraid of these hard, fast lines of, well, that's my gym friends, and then this is my, and the same, they do the same thing with their work friends. Like, or you're just a friend, and you know how to talk to people, and you can build these relationships. I think a lot of people get afraid of that blurring lines thing, and I can understand it, but I have this personal belief, like there should, and I don't really like using the word should, but I don't operate on this personal professional thing. It's, I am who I am. I'm showing up this way. And that is authenticity. And when you can do that everywhere you go, you don't have to put on this veil. You don't have to do that. And I think a lot of people had that like smack them in the face of like, I'm bored with myself. I'm not even okay with myself. I'm here at home. Or there's have these new distractions. They didn't prepare, but like, what are my support systems? How would I prepare for something like this, or the inevitabilities of that?
Well, the ultimate question, which is, who am I?
Yeah. I mean, that's how I start the podcast, right? On Naked Sunday. It's like, who are you? And, some people call it the Great Reset. I think the pandemic served as the Great Fast. And I've done a few extended fasts in my life. I actually did one the last 7 days of 2019, which in hindsight looks very, between that and an ayahuasca ceremony, were very, almost, I wouldn't say prophetic, but it was like very preparatory to clear my mind and prepare myself for a new transition, a new phase of my life. And fasts, not that I'm saying everybody should just like stop eating for 7 days, just because it's this condition of like, let me remove some of the distractions in my life. And when I sit with that, what do I find? And you see a lot of people just buried themselves in alcohol, or just ate like a crazy person, or whatever. They found some new distraction, or even worse yet, they found distraction in just being angry at their partners, and they found distraction in just being upset and like being busy for no reason, because they just couldn't sit with themselves. They couldn't find meaning and purpose with themselves alone. And the truth is, they were already doing that at work. They're just going about their daily lives and never took a moment to pause.
Yeah, it was just brought up in front of their face now. It was just all of a sudden apparent.
Yeah. And as much as some people, I think the people that really struggled with it, there's going to be a lot of people probably 3 to 5 years from now that are going to look back and go, whoa, I needed that. I had a scare that kind of like changed my life about 7 years ago. My dad almost died. It was very similar. It's like, I was sharing the story with my friends yesterday. I was like, I'm sitting in the hospital. He had some complications, like a stroke complications from medication for cancer treatment. And thank God he's alive. We're actually going on vacation in a couple of weeks. But yeah, I'm pretty amped about it. And I'm just like feeding him this gruel, whatever, like shitty hospital food. And like I look into his eyes, I'm like, one, that's not my dad. Like this guy's just looks like dead. But when I really paused and there was this stillness in the room, for me at least, what I really saw was like my own reflection of what I've done with my life right now. It means nothing. It just amounts to nothing. Everything I've done is surface level. I'm just trying to shine the shell of whatever. I've been distracting myself with meaningless problems, with meaningless superficial discussions. Not to say I hadn't had some decent conversations, some great friends and some things along those lines, but I wasn't challenging myself to go inward and really ask myself, where do I want to go with my life? So that for me, a strange blessing in disguise, now that I've had this really profound relationship that I've built with my father and changed things, relationship with like for other friends and business and whatnot, that served to me, though it was this terrifying moment in a life. And I think a lot of people have that. I can see a lot of people a few years from now when the dust settles and they catch their breath and maybe they were forced to change some things that they didn't think were, they thought it was like terrible at the time. They're going to look back and like, you know what? I might have needed that wake up call.
Yeah, 100%. For me, I had said to my girlfriend that, there's two things going to happen with relationships is either you're living with somebody you love or you're living with somebody who you hate. And there's no middle ground, because like being stuck with somebody in a house for even just quarantine for 14 days or just being stuck in a specific location, you can't travel, you can't move around. There were no distractions. You had to do everything in home type of thing. Yeah. It's like that was the first sort of wake up of like, oh shit, the person I'm with is X. And then the true feelings and emotions come up. Because I think a lot of people use work as a distraction to get away from, which is kind of counterintuitive. Like you'd think that everybody would do what they love to do, but it's not the case.
Not even close to it.
Yeah. And so when I designed my life, when I left South Africa, as some of you who's listening to the podcast know, like I purposely decided that I was going to just not have this work-life balance. It was like, if there's two sides to the scale, then we have to balance all the time. It's like, there is no scale. It's all just one life, nothing to balance. Cool, let's go. And that like gave me the clarity I needed to realize that, well, weekends are whenever I want it to be. If I wanted to do something on a particular day, because of the way that I've set up my work and set up my lifestyle, I can just go do it. Like if I have no meetings, like why do I, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you really brought something to light there. People, until they, you've gone through some challenging moments in your life. I think you've had a lot of those like, oh, what am I doing here? And it usually comes from those very deep, challenging moments when you're back against the wall, or like money's tight, or a relationship is blowing up in your face, or somebody dies or something, whatever. It's these massively painful inflection points that causes you to just like pause. It literally stops you and forces you
for
to
a lot of
sit with it.
people. Yeah. I mean, for me, like I said, Mike, for me, those moments were not as stressful or as critical. Like it wasn't life or death, although for some people it might have seemed like it. But I've since realized that this is just the way of the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I'm now owning the fact that, oh, wait, I am actually an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Which is strange because I never quite associated myself with that crowd. And like now that you're saying like everybody has to embrace change and change it, like plan for the future and do all of these things, it's kind of like, yeah, these are the traits of an entrepreneur. And now that I confidently wear the hat, it's like, yeah, we are like this.
Yeah. And it's hard to like, especially on defining yourself, like I'm a person who just knows how to live in that. And it's just part of the day to day, and accepting the change, and like it's inevitable that things will change. And that's a reality that I think every human should come to terms with. I think somebody who will say slaps that label on themselves that I am an entrepreneur, I think most readily embraces that notion. I think there's the entrepreneurial mindset. So, somebody doesn't have
Sure.
to be a business owner to embrace that sense of it. They can own their job, they can own their relationship, but it's more the saying of like, I am going to be very intentional about how I craft my life, about who I associate with, how I organize my day, how I take care of myself. And in the end of the day, we're all our own business, right? Like it's not a machine, but it is like an operating organism that needs input, output, needs a lot of different needs, and needs a lot of time to like fine tune itself and it changes over time with other responsibilities. One of the things I love that he brought up with like your girlfriend, like that sounds like the two of you had a great conversation about it. One of the big things that I was proud of with my wife, I'd gotten pretty set on my values for over the past few years because that was just something I was exploring. Together as a couple, we got really solid in that. And because she was kind of like, she had said, like, I'm kind of envious, like, what you stand for. And I was like, yeah, but that just came from just me sitting with this. I also got, plenty of people around the area just got pissed with me, and I made there are plenty of people that don't like me, we'll put it that way. But it's just from like, some people are going to not like you when you decide what you stand for. And
Yeah.
What I really admired for her, she just sat down, became very intentional, started journaling, started doing all those things. And as a couple, it brought us together. Don't get me wrong, there was friction, just like anything else. She thinks I'm a little too messy, and I think she can be a little OCD, and there's friction and conflict within that. And she's rolling her eyes off in the background at me right now. But it's the fact that we're willing to go through that together and have the continued conversation. Most people think like they're going to have this one conversation, whether it's with your business partner or your staff or your significant other, your kids. They think it's going to be one conversation. It's that Disney movie ending. Oh, we're going to get here. We're going to have that great thing. We're going to cry. We're going to hug it out, and they're going to be fucking happy. It's like, no,
That doesn't exist, mate.
Doesn't exist. And not only that, I would say that's the start. That's the start of the relationship, because that was the moment of truth where you both look each other in the eye and say, this is both what we stand for. This is where I'm at. How are we going to move forward? And we need to hold each other accountable to that. And there was this analogy yesterday. Again, I had a really amazing, I'm very fortunate to have some phenomenal friends in my life. But one of the conversations around, I think it was in business, we were talking about like people get to a certain level of, they think they're a master at stuff. But my friend brought up, he's like, you have to think of it more like karate or martial arts, where like the black belt, right? And everybody who gets to a black belt, everybody thinks, oh, you're a black belt, you're a master, you know everything now. It's like, every one of them will say, that's when my education started. That's when I actually started to learn things, because you realize you know almost nothing, the subtleties, the art of things. And I think the same thing goes in your relationships, is that when you get hyper clear on what are your values, now you have to say, well, I guess we both stand on that. Where in our life and in our conversations and in all of our doings and our everything, am I not completely in alignment with that? And it's going to be now, how do we slowly tweak and massage and work our ways into those things? And I think the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur is that you can fully control all of those things, because you're the boss. You're the boss. There's not some like person above you to say like, oh, am I allowed to change my schedule this way? It's no, you get to decide that, and you get to deal with the consequences of that as well.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the entrepreneur's superpower, or, like having that ability to create the things around you. But what you said about relationships, it's not only like personal relationships, not just husband, wife, or boyfriend, girlfriend, or, the person you're living with. It goes beyond that, because even your interactions with your friends, like, I don't know about you, but for me, I want to try to make every moment count. And the moments that are not counting, I feel terribly guilty sometimes. And it's like, sleeping is a challenge for me at the moment. Just, I have no idea why. It's like, I know I'm tired, I can feel it, but there's this part of my brain that just doesn't want to turn off. And I I heard on a podcast actually by Alex Schaffen, who has the Momentum podcast, and he, in his intro, it says, entrepreneurs can't turn it off. And when I heard that, I was like, huh, yeah, that makes sense. So why have I been trying to turn it off all these years?
I think there's this weird conditioning about all those things. I think also part of it is defining what's enough. I was having this conversation with one of the girls on the team yesterday where she struggles with that. You can define that, and you can say it's also, I mean, for me, I'd have struggled with a lot of sleep problems in my life from that perspective as well. Like the wheels are just turning.
Yeah.
One of the things I started to do was I just gave myself permission, because like all these thoughts here, if I'm not rested, I can't give them the attention they deserve. And for whatever reason, that seems to work for me, just to tell myself it's all right for right now, because with that refined and renewed energy that I'm going to get from this permission that I'm giving myself, I'm going to make this fleeting thought that's in my head, it's going to come back to me. It didn't just like pop up out of nowhere. I've probably been simmering on it from a few different angles for a while. I just, right now, for whatever reason, when I'm laying my head down and I'm at peace, it wants to just rear its ugly head. Well, it's not an ugly head because it's probably how we're solving problems. And I agree, it's not about turning it off. It's about making time for it. I think a lot of people don't make enough time as an entrepreneur to just sit and think, and they don't organize their life in a way to say like, that's probably your most valuable asset to bring to the table. You're willing to dream, you're willing to sit there, and I do it all the time. I make time to just go off into la la land and like the impossible is possible, all that, like all the woo woo shit, but it's not shit, it's real. It allows me to feel like I can make the impossible connections and then walk it back from impossible to say, here's the real, here's how we can actually make some type of connection within that. I think entrepreneurs are driven by something they can't necessarily always describe. It's this almost like this drive to like leave something behind that they may never even achieve, and that's okay. Because by all intents and purposes, like more often than not, people going into business for themselves, it doesn't make sense in the beginning, because like there's other companies that are probably doing something similar that are more funded and all those other things that go along with it, which leads into the whole like Simon Sinek kind of start with why, infinite game with the just cause, all that stuff. That's what we're being compelled to do. We're being compelled to like deal with the unknown of like, this idea I have in my head. I think there's a better way, and I'm willing to sit with that and for prolonged periods of discomfort. But if we don't give ourselves permission to make the time and delegate our time appropriately so that we can actually think about that stuff, you're missing out on the thing that's like, that's your superpower, to sit and think through the crazy that other people think is crazy. But because you're willing to sit there and be in that, you actually give it some time under tension to like chew on the idea and make it into something tangible. But most people just don't do that because of guilt, or you're supposed to be at this time and that time and da 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 da.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, the social conditioning of like, oh wait, you're different, we don't understand you, why are you the way you are? And I certainly know that I've been trying to fit in for many years, and as soon as I just realized that actually my puzzle piece doesn't quite fit, then and being okay with that, it was like, oh wait, that's when things started to change. And that wasn't like intentional change, that was just like, oh wait, this feels comfortable now, this feels me, this feels worthwhile. And when it comes to business, and when it comes to talking to your clients, or when it comes to marketing your business, or it comes to just having the conversations, because ultimately that's what marketing is. It's like we're just trying to connect with each other. It becomes easier because if you can recognize who you are, if you can look at yourself in the mirror, even just for a split second, like we're not saying, hey, stare at yourself for ages, because that can be difficult for some people. Like it just starts with like a short, like, hey, what's up? And that's it. That's where it starts. I think that's very powerful. And again, I know the podcast is all about marketing and all of this stuff. And, I tend to get into personal development stuff with people because it is the foundation. It is the thing that propels or fuels or drives, I think, everything.
I agree with that, because you said it best. It's just conversation. And the first marketing you're ever doing is to yourself. That's like the number one marketer is your own self-talk. And
but Caleb, we're lying to ourselves all the time.
I agree.
We're selling ourselves bullshit all day long.
Well, we're believing the other thing we've been pitched, because of whatever the other authority it's been, whether it's parents, society, culture, whatever.
other marketing.
Other marketing. It is just all other marketing, and people get a little wound up on that stuff. But like, I'm not going to go into politics or anything like that. But like, once people start to understand that these are just tried and true tactics, there are tactics to just selling and marketing. It's a few pointed questions, a few pointed statements, and you say it enough times, people start to believe it. You know? And when you think that, once you come to terms with it, you've been doing that to yourself all day long, because that's the only voice that follows you around all day long. It has the best access. I don't care how good Facebook is and how much data it has on you. You and your internal dialogue have the best data, unconsciously or consciously. And if you don't start to unwind that, you're going to be in a bad spot. So I think personal development is not just personal development. It's business development, because the business, and this is why I think owning a business is so valuable, because I think it's this massive personal development tool. If you are not solid on you, you will see it reflected in your business, whether it's lack of time or lack of resources. And when I started to like flip the switch and be like, everybody here that I am talking to is a reflection. When I was angry at the people walking through the door, or when I was angry at my staff, or I was angry at my clients, I'd be like this, that, and the other thing. I was not talking. There was just so much friction. And I was like, it's not them. I own my life, and it was my fault that I got myself into this position. When money is tight, I got myself into this position. It is my fault. And it was from decisions I made that I had to sit with. I had to be like, this might have been from 2 years ago. I need to think about that. It might have been from 3 years ago. It might have been from beyond that I just never came to terms with. And when I took that moment, I said, like, the business is like my walking dashboard. My bottom line is my dashboard of I'm doing it right or I'm doing it wrong. I would start to look at these people in my life and the conversations they are bringing to my table and saying, one, thank you. What are you teaching me right now? And two, oh, this is probably how I've been talking to myself, whether it's my self-worth issues, or it's, I have my own control stuff, or whatever it was. For me, the longest time, it took forever to let go of control and just trust people to do stuff and delegate self-worth stuff, to charge what I was worth. Those are things that I know I grappled with a lot. And, I put it under the guise of I'm trying to help everybody. Not so much. Like that was my protective mechanism. And it was also my reason, my false justification for saying, why can't I have the relationships and the conversations that I want to have? And it's because I had a deep issue with intimacy and being open and being vulnerable and being real. And once that changed, and I said, here's who I am, not here's a couple tidbits about me, right? When you kind of talk like, where's the bio you have? We can talk about my cliches. Sometimes we need a little more cliches in this world. I can be cheesy at time. I really can. And, I have the same 5 jokes that, my wife just rolls her eyes like, oh, there he goes again. But it's when we can understand that, it's just this beautiful thing. It's just a reflection. I started to meet these things with different empathy. I connected with this intimacy, and then I saw it reflect in my personal life. How did I talk to my wife? And I started thinking about, like, not only how am I talking with my wife, but how are we going to build a family? And those things matter, because if somebody thinks that their personal relationships are not going to affect their business life, you're out of your mind. Like,
again, one of those impossible things.
Yeah, but I mean, and then I would flip it. Why are you not treating your home life like a business? My marriage, there's consequences if it doesn't work out. Like there's a separation. There's other things. Do I believe in like?
And it affects every single piece.
Exactly. And we'll call it the clients. If we have kids, they get affected. How do they get affected? By our inability to get clear. So business, where you're almost inadvertently forced to put things down in paper, like hyper clear. That's why would we not do that? Does my wife and does my friends, is all the people that I interact with, do they not deserve the same level of clarity? Because that's apparently I care about them, right? I say I care about them more than anything. Why am I not showing them that same respect? And it was more,
or showing yourself the same respect.
Well, I was just about to say that. Why am I not
Yeah.
showing myself that same respect? And for me, the math became my core values. The literal, I don't like hard, fast lines on anything because it's just like there's no like absolutes in this world. I like things that are rigidly flexible. That's kind of the term I use. And it gives me enough of a framework that I can place it contextually into different worlds. But I've got like my 5 core values. My wife and I are on solid on the same thing. And that's the math to how we organize our life. And when I make a decision in business, it's got to line up with that. And when I make a decision in my personal life, it's got to line up with that. When I do it with my friend, everything. With my health. And my health is just my conversation with myself too. How am I treating this building that houses the business? That goes everywhere. If that
That
doesn't
helps
work,
people.
that helps people. Like if this thing is broken down, you made me blush a little bit. Like he thinks this is a handsome guy. Like if I look tired and strung out and like low energy, and I show up to a business meeting where somebody might need to talk about some heavy shit, from things that happen over time, like people tell me about attempted suicides, drug addictions, abuse, all those things. And those are real parts of their equation because part of the conversation they're having with themselves. If I'm not there and present, I might miss out on something that's really, really important that might really affect part of their decision-making process on something that has to do with, their own client processes or their own marketing efforts or their conversations they're having. It's my responsibility to show up at my best. So taking care of my health, taking care of my relationships, taking care of my own financial affairs is important. And that's what I think of when I tell anybody, you need to find harmony between those 3 things. Because if you don't, because it's not a balance thing, it's harmony. It's knowing which pieces does need what attention and what's the priority at which time. And if we don't come to terms with that, you're doing the people that you serve a disservice. And it's only a matter of time till you start to see like, oh, there's some cracks in this system. How I'm not feeding this thing properly. I guess that's a pun intended from a health perspective, but I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but so many people try to make it so literal of like, oh, I can make, especially in business, I can make this much money. And like, I was supposed to make this much money and then I'd be happy. I bought the house, I had the car, I had the model wife and all that.
Again,
okay.
the Disney ending. Yeah. It's not quite the end. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I had a lot of that titular success, business owner, Barbie girlfriend, could date attractive women and that thing. And I was young. I could have my own business and have like clout in this world. And, I could take my shirt off and look good naked, like cool. But I was miserable. And until at 27, it was like just pumping this idea of like, if I do all these things, people will accept me. And then I had this, screeching halt moment in my life between a business fallout and some other relationship fallouts and then my father's failing health that just said, this one is exhausting to keep up with. I've got injuries up the wazoo because I'm doing ridiculous things to my body to maintain something that these people don't care about. When business stuff went south, the people I thought were friends didn't stand by me. And just like my relationships I wasn't having the depth of conversation I wanted to have. And lo and behold, like business always would hit some weird ceiling. It was just this perfect, beautiful representation standing there in front of me.
Yeah, it's kind of the benchmark. I see it as the benchmark. So like for me, 2020 was challenging, not only because of like, just coming to terms with all of the stuff that was going on. I kind of took a step back and was just like observing everybody instead of being intentionally focused of like, oh wait, this is now the time to build. This is the time to hunker down on the things that are important. And I did get to that eventually, but looking at sort of my numbers at the end of the year, and it took me a long time to actually realize that, oh wait, like things are okay, but they're not like they used to be. It's not, it wasn't quite the satisfying, like entrepreneurs want to see the graph go up all the time. Like when there's a bump or when there's a little bit of a dip, it's kind of like, oh, wait, why? So I actually sat with that. It was like, oh, why? And then that's when I started having these conversations. I got serious about the podcast, started interviewing, and now, like I'm starting to see the sort of fruits of that sort of change that I've made in my life, but also in my business. Even though like I said, I haven't quite moved from the chair that I'm in, but I think mentally shifting and realizing and owning the business, like really owning it. Like I said, it's like, oh wait, I am an entrepreneur type of thing. And that might be sort of cocky to some, but we are, and we don't have to apologize for that. So quick question, I know you've got to go in a couple of minutes. How does your podcast feature in all of this? Because like I understand, like Naked Sunday is like you stripping, and in your, you want to sort of take away all the frills and all the whistles and all of those things, and speak to your friends, speak to your people, get real about life, and have people hopefully listen on a Sunday and just like chill with you. How does that fit into what you're on a mission to do?
Ooh, my mission. I was talking about this yesterday too, and I think I told you, at risk of sounding like a beauty pageant queen, like I want world peace. It's as simple as that, and that's what I'm going for at the end of the day. Okay. And when I find that people are in harmony with their own life and their health, their wealth, and their relationships, they like, what do you have to complain about? What are you upset about? You're good. And you don't feel like you need to control other people. You don't feel like you need to control other things. You take a step back and you're like, I'm just good. And Naked Sunday was a practice that I legitimately did myself. And then I brought my wife into the practice because we were both taking care of our health at the time. And I had put on a bunch of weight. I was about 40 pounds overweight at the time, and really unhappy with that because I owned a gym. And like at the time I was trying to tell people you should take care of your health. And the practice of sitting naked with myself brought up this unreal negative self-talk of like inadequacy and whatnot. I had to just sit there and confront reality of like, this is what's going on. This is where you're at. What are the behaviors that got you here? But also, what do you actually bring to the table? Why does your wife even stay with you? Why does she love you? Why do your friends value in your life? And it started to become this nakedness brought out the authenticity. It brought out the real conversation of who I am. And it allowed me to come to terms with what I believe in, what I am solid on, and what I'm willing to go to my grave for, like that kind of thing. And I believe entrepreneurs and people that are in leadership positions, because again, that's kind of like pulls away just the entrepreneur. Like you don't have to have the title of business owner. You can be a leader in any position. You can lead those that are ahead of you, that are that are the CEO. If you're the CFO or the COO, or even if you're on the service level, the client facing level, you're not like, you can lead your own life. There's a great YouTube video. I'll find it at some point, but it's like a lollipop leadership or something like that. It was a TED talk from years ago. But you can lead it in any aspect of your life. I don't think people feel confident enough to lead if they don't know who they are, what they have to bring to the table. And selfishly, I just like talking to smart people because I realize I don't know much. If everybody gets to that point in their life, hopefully, that you're like, I know very little on this planet, and I'm not going to learn more if I don't associate myself with people that do know more and listen. I need to learn how to shut up and just pay attention. But also, my endeavor with the podcast is, I believe that great business comes from trust. And if you're not open and honest and real as a human, how can somebody truly trust you? And what I've been really grateful for, one, like you sharing your own story, like you were very vulnerable. It doesn't take much for me to say, cool, I would hand this guy my money, as it should be, because money is just an idea. It's an exchange of trust. You can do away with all the pieces of paper and all that tomorrow and just go back to a barter system if we all just knew how to trust each other and live up to our word, which is hence what conversation is, right?
Would be hard for me to carry a bag of nuts to you, but sure.
Right, exactly. So obviously the construct of money and whatever that is facilitates this kind of interaction. But to me, when we can be real with each other, things happen, right? Business happens at the speed of trust, and trust happens at the speed of vulnerability. So if we just get vulnerable and be real with each other, and especially on the show, I tend to, as of late, it's been a lot of men that I've been interviewing, Men don't really talk about feelings and stuff and like love and passion and all that other stuff because it's thought of as like this soft feelings thing. And there needs to be a respectful, harmonious relationship between those masculine and feminine energies of all that, because it's the complete, it is the relationship. It is this, you know, and I talk about more as energy is not just like these other defined things. And in that space, especially when it comes to service providers, people that coach, people that build these relationships, when we can be truly honest like that, like, I think that's how we change the world. Because
Yeah, that's how real change happens.
Yeah. And I don't care if I agree with everybody. Like, I don't care. In fact, I would prefer that somebody who doesn't agree with me just tell me straight up and give me a reason why so I can understand. And I still might not agree at the end of it, but at least we can find some common ground and we can respect each other in a conversation and say, so this is where we're at. How do we move forward? People just want to bitch and moan about their stance to stand on a pedestal and be like, I want to be the one who's right. Well, what are we going to do with it? If it doesn't move forward, I think it's why coaching is such a powerful thing, because coaching is about forward facing things. Where are we going? Not like, we have to understand where we've been. We have to know where some of our tendencies come from, but where are we taking this thing? And if we're not, we all still have to live on this planet together until we, you know, upload our consciousness and get set off into the, you know, the ether. We got to find a way to figure it out. And I think business, because it is, entrepreneurs are hardwired to solve problems. We see a problem in the market, somebody's going to fill that void with solutions, because there's a calling to do better, to help other people, to make the world a better place than when we entered it. And that's what it comes down to. And it starts with conversation.
Yeah, I think you said earlier, it's like, you're an entrepreneur even if you're in a position of change. Like, you have control, or you have people that are looking at you for leadership, for direction, for guidance, or just to be the backstop. It's like the team can do its thing as long as they have this foundation to stand on and help the business grow. Because I think ultimately, like, that's where I am at the moment, is like building the team and you know, sitting in that trust and intent. Well, it's like choosing people and trusting my choice. And then if things do fall apart, not beating myself up over it, but realizing that, oh, well, that was just the wrong choice. Like, okay, fine. Or that relationship had an ending, like all relationships will have. All things that start must end. And just realizing that, well, you know, it's not the end of the world because your VA or your assistant or your partner or your whoever you're with, whatever that relationship is, leaves. It's kind of like, okay, well, now the new phase starts. Whether you chose to start that new phase or not, or somebody else chose it for you, this is just how the world functions. So thank you, Caleb. I want to be conscious of your time as well, because it's been a good conversation as always. We've chatted a couple of times now, and I hope that the audience appreciated it as well. Any last words? Where can people find you if you want them to find you?
If they want me, I'm laughing because a bunch of people have said like, you don't even have a website. I tried looking for it. I'm like, no, I don't. And that's been on a couple fronts. It's been like to prove that you can do business without having a website. Like, people, before the internet existed, people made money. Like, it's okay if you know how to talk to people. Probably the best place to follow me right now is at Leben Real Life on Instagram, or you can just friend me on Facebook. It's Caleb Nelson. I'll have a website up at some point, whenever decide that to happen. But I'm always open to connect. Advice, final piece of advice for people: take some time with yourself. Be real with yourself, and it's okay. Like, you don't have to be perfect. You're probably going to mess it up the first time,
or the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever.
Right. And you're going to constantly mess it up. And it's not so much a mess up, it's you're going to find the gaps in what you thought was true, you know, and it's going to start very vague. It's a big broad brush strokes, and then it becomes more finely tuned. And I just find the asking yourself the one question, what do you want for yourself, over and over and over and over and over and over again? That definition that leads to what is your purpose? What are you leaving behind on this planet? Which is my actual favorite question to ask. Is it will start to come into clarity and it will just show up before you. But if you can be proactive about it, you will feel like you have a sense of autonomy in deciding when things happen, as opposed to feeling like you were blindsided and it was somebody else's fault, or why is the world happening to me this way, or yada, yada, yada. It is always a choice. You chose not to prepare yourself. You chose not to look into the future. You chose not to check in on what you want. And if you can just decide that you are worth spending some time with and liking being with yourself, with what you bring to the table, I think you'll find some really amazing things within yourself. You'll realize that you've been carrying a lot of extra pressure that you didn't really need to. And from my own personal experiences, you'll find some really amazing relationships. And you also make space for the relationships that weren't really working well for you. Maybe they needed some time, but they might come back into your life in a new way that it could have been in the first place. And that's been one of the, as I've gone on a reconciliation tour, that's been one of the most bizarre things. Like, you didn't even realize it, just some time apart to get solid on you.
Yeah.
Some cool things for that. But the more you do that, the happier you're going to be. I guess that's the way.
Right.
And happy is kind of a fluff concept. I think fulfillment, and people are like, oh, I just want to be happy. Like, you're not gonna be happy every day. Not gonna be like rainbows and butterflies. But I think fulfillment in your work, in the doing of things.
Yeah, which is, in my mind, that comes down to movement. At least if there's a little bit of movement each day, whether it's your business, your relationships at home, with your family, your kids, whatever that looks like to you. Caleb, thank you so much. I appreciate the time once again. This has been awesome. I'm going to check in with you for the podcast probably in about a year, maybe 12 to 18 months. Check in with you. Hopefully by then you'll have your website. It's quicker than that. You can definitely get it done quicker than that. But yeah, this has been great. So all the links for the Caleb's goodies will be down below. And yeah, thank you for listening to the episode. If you're on YouTube, definitely hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, answer the question that Caleb answered. Like, I really want to know what you have to say about that. And if you're on Apple or wherever you're listening to the podcast, hit the follow, do the subscribe thing, leave a review. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much, Caleb, again. And I'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you, guys.